It really is a great opportunity to get ideas. So take notes, pay attention. These are also recorded, as you just heard, so they will be posted and available within within Coach's Classroom and eventually into the Futures app as well. So we'll be able to make sure everybody has access whenever we need them. Friendly reminder that I put together that real brief survey that if you have ideas, topics, ideas that you want to talk about, make sure we get that taken care of. We'll share that repeatedly so you guys always have access to that link. We do want it. We've had a couple people already respond, which is awesome, and we're building out content and everything going forward. Tonight, however, what we thought we would like to do is to really get started into the um, how do we put together practice plans? How do we put together just the development focus? And I asked Jake and Adam specifically to talk about how they structured the practice. Jake led at the coaches clinic, but then also how did the base running get structured? And then the next couple weeks, camp, how are those structured? The point being is the emphasis is on the how and the why, not on necessarily the what. So, what are we trying to do? What's the outcome? That way, we can make sure that we're building good practice plans every week when we see the players, make sure that we're doing our very best, be prepared, and lead them through. So, with that kind of said, I don't care which one of you start, but Adam and Jake, the floor is yours to give us the how and the why, not necessarily the what.
Sure. Jake, I'll let you go first. You can kind of talk through, if you want to, the practice plan that you laid out for the coaches and the players at fall camp. I'm sorry, not at fall camp, but at coaches clinic. And then I can sort of dive into some of the structured stuff for the base running that we did. For your guys' reference, obviously he's pulling that up. I'll pull up the base running one as well for when I talk about that. But go ahead, Jake. I don't know if he knows he's muted or not.
I was going to say.
There we go.
There we
Got
go.
it. Yep. Cool. All right. Well, I just pulled up the practice plan so you guys can kind of follow along and see it. Like they said, not necessarily going through the what, going through the why behind everything. So for me, like it's always beginning with the end in mind, right? And every season is different. And when I say season, I don't mean 12U compared to 11U. I mean fall to winter to spring and summer, right? Every team's starting point is different, and what you really need to work on is going to look different. But I think beginning with those things is first and foremost, right? Like, where are you now? What are the things that you have to make sure that you hit in a certain amount of time? And then you can start to chunk it out and put things into a scheduled outline, right? So I always start with the giant list, right? Like, what are the things we're trying to get through in the fall? From there, it becomes, okay, what's our typical practice structure in a 3 hour plan, right? So if we have two teams, 3 hours, we look at the first 25 minutes being our warm up every time. And then the next chunk is always our positional breakdown. That can go away depending on how much you have them, right? But realistically, especially on the youth side, as much as team practice is really for team development, training and lessons are for individual development, we all know not every kid is going to do individual lessons and training, right? So, especially on the youth side, making sure that there is a focused, strategic time in this, what was, 25 minutes here of positional development. Like, what can you do to make the players better? And it doesn't have to be a giant breakdown of every little skill and every little thing. And like, we're going to do pause reps and like, we'll do all that at lessons, right? But from the practice setting, it's, like what they don't know is the first drill that they did is our new pregame of what the infield looks like. So some of it is like I want to teach them the things that they're going to do repeatedly in this positional breakdown. So we have, call it 5 to 7 different drills that we can plug and play into this. And if we're practicing once a week, that means all month they get a different drill in their positional breakdown. But as things repeat, there's a comfort level with it that we're not wasting precious minutes at practice teaching new things over and over. I think sometimes we get excited and every week we want to do something new. There's something to that, but at the same time, like doing things really well that are repeated is the name of the game, right? So you can add a new twist, you can add, something to it that might be a little bit different, but you're really trying to repeat the same skills. You're just changing the format and the presentation of it so the players stay engaged, right? So I think, especially on the youth side, giving them a phase to where typically, like what was different about this compared to a usual practice is we'll go about 50 minutes on this instead of 25, and every single player on the youth side will have a rotation in the infield and a rotation in the outfield. That does not guarantee that they play there in game, but it does guarantee that they're getting some type of development at a position in the infield and the outfield because we don't know where they're going to play long term, right? So as much as we can say like, hey, we're great at development, we have to show that by at least giving them those opportunities. And the other piece is it will save you as a coach if they've practiced in the infield every week because they will prove to you if they don't belong in the infield in game, right? So when parent comes to you of like, hey, why is my daughter not playing third base consistently? Well, you've seen her every single week at practice at third and she hasn't earned that time. Okay. So as much as you're giving them an opportunity to earn time, you're also giving yourself an opportunity to have the data and understanding as to why players aren't earning it when they are there. Okay. One piece to this that I think is vital is actually outlining what players are going where. Sometimes we don't do that as a coach in the practice plan, and then we get there and somebody misses out on the time that they were supposed to have somewhere because we didn't put it on paper. So take the guesswork out of it, take the time to actually outline who's going where in what rotations, and then it makes it easy for you to hold coaches or parents accountable of like, hey, I need to know if you're not going to be there at least 24 hours in advance because I'm actually planning a practice. So like it changes my practice plan if you tell me an hour before that they're not going to be there. Like that pisses me off. So, and my parents know it. People get sick, we get it. But if you can know in advance, it makes it easier to plan. All of our practice plans are shared between all of the coaches that are on our field for that week as well. So you guys all got access to this one, but going into our like regular team practice stuff, those coaches have access, and the prime team, their coach has access to edit. So that way he goes in and he edits his team stuff as well. So that way they know exactly where they're going, what coaches are responsible for what drills. I think all of those details on the front end are great. As you get into a rhythm, you'll know, like, I don't have to put band work for infield. Like, they know I'm running the infield. We know Janelle and Coach Gilliland are going to run the outfield stuff. I put it in for the sake of everybody else seeing it. But, like, once you have that stuff down, save yourself the time and the extra typing, right? Like, you don't need to go into that type of detail. Okay, from there, we showed typically if we do a catcher breakdown, we do not do catcher trident. If we'll have weeks where it's just infield outfield breakdown or infield outfield and pitchers, that's where we'll add in the catcher trident at the end. We want some type of catcher work every week. So it's either blocking and receiving or it's throwing typically for us when we break those down. After that, like I kind of look at two different chunks, right? We have really two to three depending on the practice. Those three chunks are like what are we learning? Like what big skill is that? Sometimes it's first and thirds, can be bunt rotations, relays, cutoffs. And that's really where we went into that 9-ball of relays and cutoffs. Okay, learning something there. Okay, the other piece that we learned was our rundown defense. Okay, and for the practice, we wanted to show the drills. So there was some correction that we would have stopped and slowed down. We talked about it a little bit after. The rundowns were fine. They didn't shrink super well from one side like they should. So that tells us, hey, we have to do that again. So going into the next week, that drill might not change, right? I would highly recommend instead of extending drills, I would repeat them the following week. Players lose engagement if you go over 20 minutes on like one individual skill. They're going to lose focus. They're not going to get much better. So if you can't accomplish it in that amount of time, just put it back into that practice plan for the next week. The only asterisk to that would be like full team drills. You can hold their attention longer if you have live base runners, if you have live defense, if there's more players on the field that are active. So we'll always teach something that was rundown races. We'll always have some form of offense versus defense that is controlled, and typically Coach Fungo, where we're getting live, like on the clock defensive reps against base runners, simultaneously getting live base running reps, reading the defense throws, whatever that might be. And then there's always a scrimmage. Okay, this is not a roll the ball out and let them play scrimmage. It's always something specific. So for coaches training, we did our squad goal scrimmage. This next week for team practice, we're legitimately playing T-ball. And I know it sounds silly, but we're playing T-ball with the goal, again, begin with the end in mind, right? Our goal of that is to show our pitchers that it's really hard to score runs if we throw strikes, right? Like trust the defense. And also to show our hitters that strikeouts stink. And when you put balls in play, defenses make mistakes, right? So it just puts them in a simplified game where we know every single swing we're going to get defensive action. It's more for the defense than the offense, right? If you're doing live hitting on field, we're doing that this week too, but it's for points. Each player gets 10 swings. Defense has to make the play, right? If they hit it to the fence and it would have been a double, they get 2 points. So I'm not a big fan of hitting on field while everybody shags, but if we're hitting on field, for me in the fall, one of the big things that we need is to see live ball off bat that is randomized. Like they can't know it's coming to them. So throwing BP where the defense has to make the play for 10 swings, that means they're getting live reaction to a hard hit ball or off of a live pitch and a live hitter to where they're now getting game reps of what that would look like. Okay, so all of that to say, begin with the end in mind. Make sure that there's some type of like player development. Make sure that there's some type of team teaching or team development. Make sure there's some type of scrimmage where they get live reps. And then we always end with some type of toughness drill. That was huge last year. What we did, we actually had a monkey. We named him Tutty because he was our toughness monkey. And he traveled team to team all season. He had Velcro hands, so he would hang in the dugout. Whichever team or player won the toughness drill each week, that team brought the monkey to their tournament. So whether it was our prime team or diamond team, they were competing for it every week to have the additional fan in the dugout, right? It doesn't have to be a monkey. It doesn't have to be anything serious, but giving them something that is like, hey, you won, your team gets this week, they buy into that. They like it, right? So we always end with toughness. And then you guys saw us at the end, like we'll always end with power hugs and we always end with linking arms. Like there's a lot of power in being connected. So whether that's arms with the boys, we go arms around each other's shoulders. With the girls, we link the arms. But something to where they're not just standing in front of you with you talking at them. When there's a physical connection, they feel like they're part of what you're saying. You're not talking at them, you're talking to them, right? And with that, the only other piece that I would add is like, I've talked to a lot of coaches about this. Understand the language that you're using when you're talking to your team. If you are constantly saying you guys or you girls aren't doing well, you're not doing this, they think it's you versus them. They put you in a different category, right? If they are struggling, it is we. We are struggling with this. We need to make improvements. How can I help? Right? If there's a mistake in the practice plan, something doesn't go smoothly. That is, hey, I mistimed this. That's on me. It'll be better next time, right? But when you can show extreme ownership and take accountability for your mistakes, and you can take partial ownership for theirs too, they feel really connected and they feel like much better making mistakes where you're going to get more freedom of play. I think some of those little details are really important in what practices look like because you need to be able to yell at them and then pull them back real quick without it ruining the whole practice, right? And sometimes that happens. Okay, we had a moment at this practice where like I had to get on somebody. We had a moment at fall camp that I had to get on somebody. Your ability to shift your tone right back to positive will play a big role with holding everybody else's attention. They don't want to be fearful because you just had to get on a different player and now they think you're going to bring the same energy to them, right? So be able to shift and compartmentalize something that happened with the direction of where you're going and what the purpose is. All right. So that's kind of the general shell outline that I use for most practices. I know Adam and I have a very similar one in what we use. Obviously, time of practice, if you have 2 hours versus 3, is going to impact that a little bit. Times of week, like how often you're practicing, will impact it. This is the shell that I use for once a week, 3-hour practices.
So I think that one thing that I would share for the masses is that when we are teaching, some of us on the call have education degrees and spent some time in the classroom. The adage that I always had when I was teaching was that 70% of education is repetition. The other 30% is new stuff. So when you think about what Jake was just talking through, introducing the new on-field warm-ups, how things are going to go here right at the get-go, but then that's going to be something that is very consistent and repeated week in, week out. The drills may be similar, but you add a nuance every week. that's repeated so that you get the same reaction, you get the players to understand what their role is and how things are working, and that's absolutely critical. So you structure the practice plans, and I'm sitting here taking notes, and I hope everybody else is too, to make sure that we're really thinking about where are we going, what do we need to work on, and how do we make sure that we're developing the team, not just focusing on beating down kids. And I think that language, um, Jake referenced that, just my own two pennies on that is we are a team. We is everybody, coaches, players, parents even. And so when we can be united, that makes a very, very different outcome on the field when we go to battle than if we're squabbling with each other. So by being able to own our own mistakes as coaches makes a big difference when we expect players to own their mistakes too. Very good. Cool. Any questions for Jake before we move over to Adam and what he's kind of structured things with base running and fall camp? You can either unmute or you are welcome to use the chat.
Hey Jake, I got a question
What you
about
got?
more so that T-ball drill that you mentioned.
Yeah.
How do you control the balls from going on one side of the field only? I know that's easier as they get older, but let's say like the younger ages, maybe 10, 9, 10.
Good question. So I think sometimes the lesson is in not controlling it, right? Like the reality is they might all pull it, right?
Right.
But that's part of the conversation at the end, which to me, if that happens, that tells you next week you got to run BP, but you run BP not from the plate, you run it from the backstop, and every ball has to be hit in fair territory because now you're working gap to gap and using the middle of the field, right? So you give them a different visual. So if that's the feedback, I think sometimes we try to coach the feedback before the players see it. And when we do that, they don't believe in what we're saying as much because they haven't seen the failure yet, right? So to some extent, like let them pull the ball, let them roll over ground balls because they're trying to hit bombs because the same thing happens in a game, right? Where that turns into a rollover ground ball to shortstop or third baseman. But I wouldn't try to control it at all. I would utilize the result of what their hits do to kind of plan that next week of where do we need to go from here based on the results that you see.
Perfect. Thank you.
And if they swing and miss, it's a strikeout. You can't give them multiple tries in T-ball, guys. You swing and miss, you're out. All right.
I know some 17 you guys last year that would have struck out doing that. If I do,
I had a high school kid do it one year when we did it
that's pretty
as
sick.
part of our fall series. Legitimately swung and missed 3 times. It's like, I'm not sure you're going to make the team, bub.
That might have been like, I don't want to run to first, so
Right. Just
yeah. Spelling the word incorrectly during the spelling competition just to get on one of those. I appreciate that, Jake. As Jake mentioned, like certainly a lot of our stuff is very structured. It's structured very similarly, and so I'm not going to rehash like one of my practice plans or a practice plan that I put together for our team. As Jake mentioned, our practice plans have already got like many of them uploaded to the coach's classroom, and we will continue to upload those as well. I kind of want to just highlight a few key points as to the why in some of these practices and what you guys should really be targeting. As Jake mentioned, like the end in mind and the forward thinking about what you're trying to work on is really important. And I think what I really want to highlight about that is really understanding the time of year that you're in and understanding, how many practices you've had up until this point or the lack thereof, and understanding the importance of what you're teaching right now when building out your practice plan. Like, so for instance, we had to put together a practice plan for fall camp this last weekend for FAM and BAM. And when building that out, we had to say to ourselves, like, hey, this is the first thing that any of the returners are going to see for this year, but it's also the first thing that anybody that's brand new to the program is going to be exposed to. And for us, like, when creating that plan, we had to be very strategic about what it was we were going to teach because we wanted to not only set the right foot forward, but like for me, it's about when you only get a chance to work with these kids like once, max twice a week, you have to be very intentional about what you do. I'm gonna have Mike touch here in a little bit here, a few minutes on, practices from like the collegiate standpoint, and Tony talking about practices from, the high school standpoint, where you get to see these people and work with them day in and day out, and kind of how their practice plans get structured and how they change throughout. Because you don't want to waste anybody's time, and you don't want things to become so repetitive and so monotonous. Even though repetition does build a lot of strengths, you don't want it to become so monotonous that you lose the excitement about practice and the excitement of the development. But for us, we only get to work with these people once or twice a week. And from the fall camp perspective, we only working with them once a week. And it's our first one. So for us, it's like establishing a practice plan that shows our standards, shows our methods, demonstrates expectations from the beginning. And honestly, it's a test for us to say, hey, we're going to use base running as our first practice. We're not even going to have these kids touch a ball yet. And it's a challenge to us to where it's like, hey, it's the first exposure that these kids are getting to our program all year. Can we utilize base running, which doesn't even include using a ball, and make that practice as engaging as we can to make it to where these kids leave going like, hey, I learned a lot today, even though all we did was base running for 2.5 hours, and I'm ready to come back for more. So for us, with that first practice, we implemented and used base running because if you can fulfill our standards and follow our standards while just focusing on probably the portion of the game that everybody hates the most, like you're going to do pretty well throughout the rest of fall camp and the rest of our off-season training because it gets a lot more exciting from there. But also for us, the reason that we implemented and utilized base running beforehand, as you guys have heard us say many times, like that's a part of our identity as an organization. It's a part of our identity as as teams within the organization. We do not want to, I guess, do the same old, same old. We want to, be aggressive. We want to challenge our players, and we want to challenge our coaches to be really creative offensively. I think, that doesn't mean that we're taking the bats out of really good hitters' hands and over coaching, but it's implementation of skills that other people aren't using that make us different. And, that's why, Jake and I are just obsessed with base running and, utilizing that and kind of, playing chess while other people are playing checkers. So like we put base running as the first day of fall camp because it helped implement a standard. It helped implement an understanding of structure, and it helped implement a little subset and a little piece of our identity as an organization to demonstrate sort of who we are. So I say all that to take it back to Jake and I's both first point of being forward thinking and seeing the end in mind. But how do you get to the end? You got to coach right now in order and make today's practice and the first weekend of August be productive so that your third practice in April is productive as well. Like I think practices when we only get 1 to 2 days a week with our practices, I think when we have audited our coaches in the past or kind of evaluated in them in the past, I think a lot of people put together practice plans of just like, okay, I have to do 2 hours. I have to think of 2 hours worth of drills and put a time frame next to all of just those drills that we've done. Whereas instead of like, it's just a 2 hour subset of drills instead of like, hey, I have a focus that I need to work on today. There's certainly drills that we can do to work on our individual skills, but we have to focus on rundowns today. Our bunt coverage knowledge is really subpar right now. We have to focus on bunt coverages and utilizing a big portion of our practice to focus on those things. So when you guys do have 1 to 2 practices a week, I think it's one thing to obviously plan out the practice, but you're going to have a much easier time if you plan out throughout the next month. What are the main things I want to focus on every single week and try to implement and then stick to that schedule? It makes creating your individual practice plans on a given day much easier as opposed to just sitting down at the computer. I'm like, hey, I got practice on Wednesday. It's Tuesday. What can I throw together for this next 2 hours tomorrow to try to keep these kids engaged? I think you do a much better job of that. Again, if you think about topics or specific things that you want to implement for that time or things that you want to review. And once you get all those things down that you want to implement, then it's about at that point challenging the process and making things more difficult. We're going to go forward and have, positional practices. We're also about to embark on, Jake, how many weeks of it is our block lessons? Somewhere around 30 or 32 total
20,
weeks.
25 total through the blocks.
Yeah, 25 total weeks of different lessons, right? And it's not about just coming into all of those sessions and implementing just drills to keep people busy. It's teaching them the skills. And then as most of those practices and sessions are done, now it's to make the kids a lot better. You have to challenge that process and make things even harder. So, not a lot of breakdown again of drills or kind of what we put into those practices. But again, for us, it's about thinking about, hey, in the immediate, hey, in the fall, what are the main things that I want to implement the most? We're not going to go any of us are going to go out there during our first two practices with a brand new team and just go, hey, we're going to do live right now and just go, right? I think that would be a really bad utilization of our time. But I also think it would be an even worse utilization of our time of just filling up 2 hours worth of drills to work on, just different fundamentals. There is a time and a place for that. I think as Mike or Tony could both attest, like when you can practice 5 days a week, for a month or 2 months before game start, you can do a lot more of like those small idiosyncrasies. But for us right now, focus on the end in sight. I think build out kind of like a month-to-month plan of the things that you want to implement. Then building out your practice plans individually week by week becomes a lot easier because you know what you need to focus on here. Keep that same first 40 minutes or so of your practice with that same structure, like Jake said, so you're not just retyping and retyping. Then your kids feel a sense of routine, a sense of repetition. They can almost be doing part of the practice on their own, which I think there is a really good benefit to that. If you can get, 12-year-old kids to have a standard and hold the standard for 40 minutes without over coaching them, and have that first 40 minutes be really productive during that. I think that they get a lot better because of that. Then you have your last hour and 20 minutes of, your positional breakdown, then an hour of whatever it is you want to focus on for this week. So when it comes to the fall camp, our main focus at the beginning, again, implement a sense of identity, show our standard, and, demonstrate for us just a really core piece of what we believe in as coaches, not only for you guys to see, but for the players to see as well, and really try to give them a really good first impression. So next week, it's getting the ball implemented into the game a lot more, getting kids moved around on the field, and making sure not only do they understand where they're supposed to be in their position defensively, but also where everybody else is supposed to be on the field defensively as well. So a lot more scrimmage type stuff, but also getting the kids to communicate a lot more. So I would say as important as next week is to focus on defense, we basically didn't have any kids talking at all this last practice during fall camp. Next week, they're going to be talking a lot because if they don't talk, they won't survive the infield and outfield communication stuff, the cutoff and relay communication. Getting them talking and getting them making mistakes, and helping see them through those mistakes is going to be a huge theme for next year. So, yeah, that's all I got. Or next week, not next year. Sorry.
What questions do we have for Adam as far as outlining the bigger picture?
So Rob, Tony V here. Don't have questions. I do know there's a concern with high school age teams finding facilities to practice. I haven't looked at participants. I'm assuming there's a lot of high school age coaches here. And I kind of want to put that to rest a little bit tonight because I've been fortunate. If somebody's going to, when they ask me to speak at clinics, it's going to be somewhat like Jake. It's going to be first, they want me to speak about culture. And the second thing, they want me to speak about practice organization with limited time, limited space, limited facilities, right? One of those or all three of those, right? So you do not need a high school sized diamond to practice your defensive stuff. Matter of fact, it's almost even better to practice it on, I'm going to call a pygmy type situation, right? Or a littler diamond, because obviously you're right there all together. Communication from the coaches to the players can be, and you're going to be able to teach where your players need to be, when they need to be there, what time they need to be there, right, and all that type of stuff. So we don't have to, don't get me wrong, we want a high school facility or, dimensions or whatever, but you don't necessarily need that for a defensive practice. And I just want to bring that up because obviously I heard that a lot this year with the high school age coaches. Like when where are we supposed to practice? We don't have facilities, those type of things. I mean, you could get a lot done in a shortened up version. So I just wanted to bring that up to the coaches out there.
I think, and that's a great point, V. But I think also we oftentimes talk about trying to get the kids to be comfortable enough and play loosely enough that the game slows down for them, right? Well, especially on the baseball side, if you're already on big field, playing the 60-90. Wouldn't it make sense to slow down the big field by playing on a smaller field and having to move faster and react faster and be able to push those reaction times? That could be a really a good opportunity to work on skill set and development there as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can get all your defensive stuff done. I know last fall, our administration at Roncalli said we can't use the field. The infield's in bad shape, and most coaches would flip out about that. But we immediately went right inside to our bubble, right, which isn't full distance, and just, I mean, got more done probably, right, because of the short distance until we could get back out on the field. So I just kind of want to put that to rest and say, heck, you could go out to an open field and throw down a plate and three bases, right, somewhere and still get your stuff in instead of us going to, we don't have places to practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I
Absolutely.
think I want to add to that. I think Coach hit on something there. Is like I think some of the best coaches in the world, not only do they have great knowledge, but they're just like the most adaptable people to anything in any moment. And I think if we can teach players that to be adaptable and to try to avoid like immediate open frustration when something doesn't go our way, that's probably a really good thing. And one of the easiest ways to do that is learning to be able to have a practice in something as big as a closet. I really feel like I could fill out a practice in something in a really small space. And it's because just over the years, we've been confined in many different ways and had our hands tied behind our back in many different ways to where we've had to do that. And you got to find ways to make your kids better and find ways to make them be adaptable. I remember we were at Friday Night Lives last year, and we had a 13-year-old kid on our team that was a pitcher only, and by his choice, he's been a pitcher only since he was like 9 years old. Very very rare we're gonna ever have anybody that's a pitcher only at that time. And we were doing lives, and we had our mound set up, and we were getting ready to start. And in front of the mound was a softball pitching mat just laying on the ground. And he asked me before he started, he goes, "Hey, can you roll that up and move that?" Like it wasn't anywhere he was going to step on. It was just in his line of sight. And he goes, "Hey, can you roll that up and move that?" I was like, "Why?" He goes, "It's just gonna bother me that it's there." And I'm like, "That's crazy. Like you need to get over that and be adaptable to something. Like if that's making you uncomfortable, a lot of things are gonna make you uncomfortable." So, and I left it there and I went and scattered chairs around the rest of the tunnel the whole time to make him have to worry about other things and have to get past those things. And so, as coaches, we need to be adaptable to any situation, and teach our kids to be adaptable as well. So
To, to add to that too, Adam, as a college coach, I can, several times, even at the Division I level, right? I remember um, going to a hotel parking lot and getting in our bunt coverage in the first and thirds and even some ground balls, right? So
yeah,
I think you bring out a great point there, just being adaptable to instead of trying to, I don't want to say make excuses. Maybe some of us don't know that stuff yet, right? But it can be done, limited time, space, facilities. It's instead of calling off practice or not practicing, it can be done by figuring out different avenues.
Our first season coaching, Adam and I didn't have access to any field. We literally practiced in one of our players' front yards for the entire season. And it was great, right? Like I go back to the idea that like Latin America rules baseball and the facilities that they have in most of these places to train is not what we have, right? Like there is something to be said for training on gravel and playing on turf, right? Like if it gets easier in game, that's not always the worst thing. And I'm not saying like go and just find a gravel field for all of your practices, right? But like I love the Lassie League for fam because we play on an average dirt field and then we get to go after training on that all season, we get to go and play on turf. It's easier, right? Like if the facilities get easier for games, that's not a bad thing at all.
Totally agree.
I think the other thing too with that is that when we can plan out as coaches, when we can plan out what we want to accomplish over the long haul, then it makes the adaptability potentially a little bit easier because then when you have to deal with the rain out and you have to move inside or whatever, it's like you've already had the big picture done. Now it's just a matter of modifying what you do that particular day to make it effective for the space you have.
Well, I
So
think that's a good point, Rob. Like one of my challenges to coaches this year would be like rather than canceling a practice because of rain, find something else to use that time to be productive, right? Like, don't give up your one practice a week. I briefly mentioned it at Coach's Clinic, but like when we got rained out and had to move inside, we took those as like film sessions. We would go through and show the errors or bad body language or whatever. Like we'd make the players watch themselves and each other on field, right? I think they can learn a lot from that. We turned them into like BP days, but as head coach, like I would have each player come in separately. So it was really player meetings, right? Where it was just a good chance to check in, like, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? What can we do better to get the best out of you? Like, you don't get those opportunities that often, and you definitely don't get them if you're not intentional about finding them. So, like, if you're rained out from being outside, it doesn't mean you have to take the same practice plan and find a way to do it in two tunnels indoors, right? But like, what can you get done that's either going to build the culture, build the team, build the relationships, or make you guys better? There's always something. There's always something. So before we just resort to, all right, we're not doing it that week, like find something more productive. And if you're going to give the week off, it should be with intention to rest, right? Like, and those happen. Like, you play a lot and you get to weeks where it's like, man, they need a day. Fine. But that should be the intent behind it, not just like, you don't want to do it. Like that happens too much. We got to be better about that.
Totally
Yeah,
agree.
great opportunity for team building type stuff, like Jake's saying, on a day off, right? Or if it's a rain out or whatever. Great day to play wiffle ball in the rain a little bit, right? Have some fun with your team, those type of things.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have lots of experience here on the call. We've heard from Tony. I'm going to put Mike on the spot. Mike, you have any thoughts on practice planning and organization that you'd like to share with us?
See if you can figure out how to unmute.
Out on mute.
Let's time him.
1,000, 1,000. There we go.
So you have to go back. I broke up somewhere in there while Rob was talking. I heard, see how long it'll take him to unmute, and I was like, I feel like they're talking about me right now.
Bingo. Go ahead, Rob. What
Yes.
was your question?
That I was just saying we've got a lot of experience here on the call, and we talk about practice planning and how we structure everything. And we've heard a little bit from V about being adaptable. What kinds of golden nuggets do you have for us as we get the season started?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure I have any gold nuggets. Um, I think intentionality creates adaptability is probably the one thing that I would say. Like, I just feel like if you're intentional in the front of it, which is so much of what you guys are talking about, it creates the ability for you to make a proper plan so that you're ready on the back end for all of the things that come over time. In a general sense, I think you guys are doing the same thing, right? I may break mine down. I'm a little more intentional in reference to pitchers. I'm more sensitive to them than probably the BAM, you guys as a group. I'm not sure if you guys like pitchers yet.
That's why you're here. We need somebody that does.
I haven't decided that anybody likes us. So so in those breakouts, right? Like when you have those 30 minutes, to Jake's point, in which we're working on maybe really specific things. Like I want to be really intentional about, in particular, uh, counts, rhythms, patterns, picks to second, stopping feet. What is stopping feet? Like all of those things. Those are things that with pitchers, I try to do, or we try to do currently daily. Like that's sort of a daily thing. And then, we have obviously a team defense portion right there where we try to make sure our pitchers are included as well. And so, but in a general sense of listening to everything that's been said and how it's being done, the how, not necessarily the what. The only thing that I can say that I try to do is I try to write everything out as he said. So I write down, I'm going first, thirds, bunt plays, uh, bunt play. We're going to go through all of our hitting stations, all of like I literally write it all out and then we just pull them out daily. Like, okay, tomorrow we're going to substitute this for this. And we just have, I don't know. It's a huge list of just stuff. Here's what we got. This is what we have to accomplish. Here's our goals. This is what we have to accomplish this week. By November, we need to be in this area or space in reference to what we have taught. So ultimately building up to, day one of the season.
I will say this to add to what Mike's saying. Something that as an organization we have to get better at is the pitching portion of it, right? And obviously we have Mike now. It's obvious that we don't have like lights out pitching stuff. I'm not putting anybody down, but including in practices, you can do something. I know we do this at Roncalli. The high school rules are you're only allowed 4 hours a week in the fall, two days a week, no more than 2 hours a day. But you have to find time, 20 minutes or something at the end of practice where there is a pitching portion of it. And you don't even have to throw a baseball. I mean, you could do so many dry drills, right? The practices, the rule is you can't have a ball or a glove, to go over 2 hours. Well, you can do pickoffs in the bullpens, right? At the end of practice, you can chalk talk it. You can do dry drill work. You can do towel drills. You can do mechanical stuff, because I'm going to tell you guys right now, and this is even before when I switched over from Canes, Indiana to BAM, all of the coaches were so upset with pitching. And none of us really in a team practice, besides the defensive part of maybe PFPs or V drill or what, we don't spend enough time with the mechanics of pitching or the pickoffs, or even like you can do a bunt coverage drill without even a baseball. You can throw a cone down there and say, bunt third base line, right? And teach them how to get to that ball, right? And there's all kinds of things you can do, and we don't throw it into any of our team practice type stuff. And guys, we all know it's the most important part of the game. I know, like Jake was frustrated with his pitching this summer. I know that's the thing that Adam gets frustrated with. But we are hammering those guys on offense, defense, base running. And our organization is really good at that stuff, but it all starts in that circle, that circle in the middle of the infield. And so I think we can get better. I think it'd be a great, Rob, a great Monday night discussion. Just the pitching part of it. And obviously we got a really good one in Mike right now. And, I feel like I can teach the core values of pitching, right? But we got a really good one in Mike now. So I think we have to include it some way in some form.
I think that's fantastic. It is important. It just hammers home we can't leave any one aspect of the game um, without attention, and we've got to make sure that we compass everything, not just because we want the kids to be engaged in learning, but because we're trying to teach them how to play the game properly. And if we ignore something, then we're not doing ourselves or our players justice. So that I think that's good stuff from both of you. I think one thing I picked up on from what Mike was saying is that he was talking about how he's writing down first and thirds, bunt coverages, maybe cutoff moves, things like that, and putting that together as a list. I think that that's a great place if you are newer to coaching, or even just thinking about what do you want to make sure you accomplish during the course of the season and development, making sure that you don't leave anything unturned. Don't leave that stone unturned. So you write down everything you want to make sure you cover at some point, and then you've got an opportunity to really look at that big picture and pull from that for practices and focuses going forward. I think that's a great idea to be able to break it down that way. Aaron, what's your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Jake, if you could share some of what you've done in terms of those toughness drills at the end of practice. For the last couple of years, now our kids have been 8 and 9, but we've really tried to focus on finishing with something fun, just around the idea of, like Adam talked about, making sure they want to come back for the next practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jake, and I'm gonna interrupt real quick. You're like, yeah, V, you always interrupt, but and before he gets started, because they're really good at it, and I know his teams at Perry Meridian and all that, but I mean, practice has to be competition too, right? There has to be competition more than once in practice. And so he's going to probably bring your guys have to compete against each other. They have to. And it'll turn over to the games. Go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're spot on. I think getting them to understand that like toughness drills can be fun, those two things can coincide is important. So I'll go through a few of them. We showed a good one at practice. I'm going to put that one in. I've never done that one. I like that one a lot, that we showed there. But we'll do things as simple as, we have two teams at one practice, right? So we'll have one team at the plate, one at second, and it's literally they're going all around the bases. It's a relay race, tagging the next person, right? But like it's a full sprint, and if you're short on time, it takes 5 minutes. It's a good one to end with, where a team wins, like one or the other, right? We'll do things like we did to end base running, where like it's toughness in the sense that like you have to be disciplined. What we saw, we didn't see this on the BAM side as much, but like when we did the base running competition at the end on the FAM side, we had probably 6 to 8 girls get eliminated because they didn't slide and they would have been first, but they didn't slide, so they got beat, or they didn't dive back, they went in standing, right? So like there's a toughness component to base running that's already built in, that like you got to put in the effort and actually get dirty, right? Some of the other ones that I love, we'll go one girl at a time hitting. They'll get 3 swings off of a tee, and we put the tee between home plate and first base. They're only allowed to hit like into left field then, so it's pretty much straight line. And the other team gets to have a full defense, like every single player out there. If the ball gets through the infield on the ground, gets to the outfield, they get a point. If it lands in the outfield, they get 2. If they hit it over the fence, they get 3. So now your players are communicating, they're diving everywhere. They don't necessarily care about fielding it clean, but they're worried about keeping everything in front, right? So now you have teams diving, doing all that. That's a fun one. One of my favorites is hot seat infield. So we'll line everybody up at short, all 20 players, 22 players. And typically when we run hot seat, like if you miss, it's like knockout. You're on the hot seat. If the next person makes the play, you're out, right? But if they miss at short, when we do it as a toughness drill, they have to sprint from shortstop to the right field foul pole and back. And if they make it back in line before it's their rep again, they stay in. They're still allowed to play. And then as we get down to half of that to 10, we go left field foul pole instead of right field foul pole. So now you have these players that are literally, they miss a ball and they're going to miss because they're exhausted because you're going one after the next after the next. And they're full sprinting, coming back to get in line to field again and make a good throw to first. And if they miss, they sprint again, right? So you start to see real quick who cares and who's competitive because they go all out. Last year, once we got down to the final two, our player was sprinting to the foul pole. She was sprinting back. The other girl made the play and she just like flopped down, just like completely exhausted, just laying in the outfield. It was awesome to see the effort on that. But stuff like that can be really good. And then the other one, like that has nothing to do with baseball, but was fun, is we lined first base with one team, third base with the other team, and we numbered them all off. And I would just fungo a ball and call out a number. And if it was number threes, those two had to sprint. They were in helmets. They had to sprint, dive, trip each other. I don't care. First person to get to and pick up that ball was still in. They got a point for their team. The other team lost that number. They were out. We went until we were down to one single team remaining. So, like, you can get creative if there's a baseball or softball component. Obviously, like, some weeks you definitely want that. But there are other weeks that, like, it's just about being tough and pushing through and learning to grind to where, like, it can literally be basketball box out drills. You know, put a ball down, keep the other person from getting to that ball for 10 seconds, say go, and watch them figure it out, right? Like, it doesn't, sometimes we give too many directions where it can be as simple as like you keep them from this, go. Like good luck, you figure it out, right? Like see how they respond and what it does because it forces them to be creative and figure out how to actually be tough. So those things, there's a few of them. One of the things for every coach, Adam and I had practice plans into like the overall coaches classroom. I had a couple coaches that told me at the end of this last season, I had added them to my like team classroom where we send out our weekly report stuff and practice plans and all of that. That really enjoyed being in that because every week they would just kind of check the practice plan, see what was going on, get the team communication. That can also be overwhelming because it's more communication for a team that isn't yours. But if there's any coach that like wants to be added into my team's classroom or what Adam does with his or anything like that, just ask. We'll do it. We have no problem doing it. We just don't want to overwhelm you with too many classrooms and too many things, but that's always a resource that we're willing to share.
Sometime I'd like to add to Jake's thoughts there about some more things you can throw in that would make it competitive, baseball related, competitive, and maybe even some conditioning that they don't really know they're getting in, right? Just like that drill we did, the chicken drill or whatever. I mean, they're running, man, right? They're running. I mean, that teaches maybe barrel control right at the plate. You know, if you hit it down the left field line, that the first base has to run, you know, for more points and stuff. They weren't even thinking that in that game. But if you do it over and over, they're starting to think about where that ball needs to be placed to score the most runs so their team wins and they don't have to do burpees or sit-ups or push-ups. But there's other things that we can include, Rob, down the line on that.
Hey, one other thing on the pitching stuff that we were talking about that I think gets lost in all of this. Most of our pitchers go to pitching lessons, right? Like they have somebody that they're working with on specifically pitching. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. But if you really hear what Mike was saying and all of the things that he went through as well, it was being a pitcher, not just pitching, right? Like it's we have some people we had two last year on our team that I thought were good at pitching, but they were terrible at being a pitcher. Like they couldn't hold a runner, they had no move, they couldn't field their position, they were bad at bunts, late on their coverages, late on backups. So when we think about including pitcher breakdown into all of this, they're not saying that every week we need pitchers on the mound throwing. Okay, there's a time and a place for that. But they're saying like grow your pitchers and the ability to understand how to be a pitcher and play the position, right? So if you're doing 21 outs, have a pitcher out there that's working bag coverages, that's working backups to bases. There's a lot of different ways to incorporate your pitchers into what you're already doing. But a lot of that too, like not everybody is a pitching coach. That does not mean that we can't be creative in finding ways to incorporate pitchers into practice specifically. That's all I have. V's probably got something else though.
He's resorted to the group chat, so you look there.
I love it.
Yep.
Dodgeball, yeah, dodgeball plays.
How about duck, duck, goose, man? Until I had a college kid break an ankle on that, and we about got sued. I had to eliminate. And then dodgeball, we used to play 'em with tennis balls, so I had to eliminate that when somebody got an eye taken out. But I thought it created toughness, man. Hey, our first rain out practice in college, the first day you're supposed to be rained out, our players played football in the outfield. I would quarterback one team, system would quarterback the other team, and I told our players if one guy touches me, they're running the rest of the practice.
Hey, football with baseball gloves and a baseball, incredible outfield work. Like they're running
Absolutely.
routes, they're working different catch positions. That's a great outfield breakdown. It's just a 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 football game with coach being all-time QB.
And they know that if they drop a ball that they don't know, but they have to run after if they drop a ball.
I love it.
Concentration, right? Yeah.
Yep. I love it.
Yep. Adam, anything you want to add?
Nope. You guys did good.
Cool. Okay. Any other questions? We are right at an hour. We want to try to keep this at an hour just for everybody's sanity, but we also love to chat. So sometimes we'll go over and the conversation keeps going. But any other questions for the good of the order as far as the how and the why behind practice planning and what we have going on? We move quickly, so if you don't unmute and ask or put it in the chat, we're moving right on. So cool. Okay, well, this was absolutely fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for being on here tonight. Thank you, Jake, Adam, V, and Mike, for providing some insight and nuggets of wisdom, whether they're golden or not. Mike, they're always nuggets, so that's a good thing. We want to make sure that every week is structured like this. So if you have ideas that you want us to talk about, feel free to put that in, and we'll incorporate it into the things that we have planned for you. Want to make sure that this is as much of your time as possible. So thanks for being here. If you know somebody who's supposed to be here but wasn't, give them the old jab jab and say, hey, next Monday, 9 p.m., be there, be square, and let's have a great conversation. Guys, have a great week, and we'll see you Saturday and Sunday at fall camp, week 2. Rock on, gentlemen and ladies. See ya.
See you guys.